Hi, welcome to the Jefferson and Franklin County Service-Based Count Volunteer Training that is a part of the Missouri Balanced Estate Continuum of Care Point-in-Time Count. My name is Karen Farrell. I am the lead for Jefferson and Franklin counties, also housing manager for Comtrea. Again, thank you for joining. So during this brief training, we're going to review what the PIT count is, what a service-based count is, who can participate. We're going to talk about what your role as a volunteer would be if you're interested, who you're going to interview, who actually counts in this survey, and what the actual survey and release and confidentiality form looks like, how to access it, and then we'll talk about resources. So just a brief update. So a PIT count is a one-night nationwide snapshot of what a community looks like as far as their homeless population and resources that they have available. Again, it's nationwide. This count happens the last 2 weeks in January across the United States, with all counties and states participating. Again, it's just to get that brief snapshot of that one night. It's not an all-inclusive, but again, it gives us a set timeline that we can compare from year to year. Counties and states are only required to participate once every 2 years. Missouri participates annually. So this count actually will take place this year on January 25th, starting at 5 p.m., and it will run through the night and will end on January 26th at 7 a.m. So anyone counted during that time will be a part of the PIT count. However, we've opened the door for agencies like yours, if you're listening to this, to do what's called a service-based count. And so a lot of times when we're working in agencies and dealing with the population, we encounter those people who are homeless. And this gives us the opportunity to reach out to those people that we work with, that we've already built a rapport with, and ask them, where did you sleep last night? Where were you at Wednesday night? And would you be interested in letting us gather some information about your situation, about you, without identifying who you are, so that we can add you into this snapshot. It helps cities, it helps counties, it helps states determine where maybe future funding needs to go and could potentially help with services in our area. So the service-based count, we get 7 days to follow up on that. It is encouraged that you follow up with any individual that you feel might be homeless or might have been homeless on the night of the 25th within a couple days. Unfortunately, when someone's under that kind of stress, they may not remember where they slept 3 nights ago. Right now, their priority is, where am I sleeping tonight? Where am I going to get shelter? Where's my next meal coming from? What's the weather going to do? How am I going to get my needs met? So they may not be able to accurately recall. So we're requesting that if you're going to do the service-based count, that you do so from 7:01 a.m. on the 26th through February 1st. We're allowed 7 days, though, to enter the database and add that information. So agencies that can participate, here's a list of places. There's an example later on of a food pantry that has a food drive on Thursdays. And as a volunteer, somebody reached out to the food pantry, said, hey, would you be willing to call people that that come through here that are homeless, or count them that day of your food drive? Staff got trained. Those staff or volunteers then were able to screen those persons and get that information into the database. And again, this is just a list of places. Depending on your agency that you're with, that may be why you're doing this, is because you've been identified as an agency that could help us in the community benefit from your information. So again, organizations that work with individuals, period, are those that are homeless. And again, it's only conducted after 7:01 a.m. on the 26th. And then for the next 2 or 3 days, data can be collected. And we would like to have that. It needs to be input by February 1st. So why do we do this again? It's to measure and monitor trends across our local community and at a national level. It helps us to understand what resources we have. So we'll also be counting those that are sheltered, and I'll explain that briefly in a minute, and those that are unsheltered. And we're complying with federal regulations, our HUD, by participating in this count. So again, I mentioned there's two different kinds of counts. There's the unsheltered count, and so that's anybody sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation. And then there's the sheltered count. So in Jefferson County, as an example, we have a domestic violence shelter. We have a transitional domestic violence housing option. And so those individuals in that night, in those facilities on the night of the count, will be counted as housed homeless persons, because had they not had that support, potentially they would have been homeless during the night of the count. There are other agencies, not-for-profit agencies, that fund someone for hotel motel stays, and those persons are also counted as sheltered homeless. But that won't pertain to you, other than knowing that information, so that when you're screening the person, you'll know whether they are eligible to be counted. Again, so the actual street count starts January 25th at 5 p.m. It will end at 7 a.m. On the 26th. Then the service-based count begins at 7:01 a.m. and will run through February the 1st. And again, we recommend that you make those contacts within the first couple days. So who we're not counting, this is more for on the street, but again, if somebody's on the streets because they're selling drugs, engaged in any kind of illegal activity or prostitution, we won't count those persons. For you, if that person was in jail, they're in a juvenile correction facility, foster home, inpatient treatment center, or inpatient in a hospital, or actually in hospital in general, because our hospitals in both Jefferson and Franklin County are training staff to help us assist those people who are just there for immediate treatment and release. Again, I mentioned the hotel motel. If you encounter someone who is that you thought was homeless and is staying in a hotel or motel, we're going to request that you email me to make me aware of who that agency was that supported them, so we can make sure and get information and numbers from those agencies as part of the street count. So again, the two different counts. We have, again, a county coordinator. We have some highly trained volunteers in Jefferson and Franklin County, or Franklin County, that are covering that area. We're offered paper and electronic forms, but for the shelter, or for the service-based count, we're going to ask that you use the electronic forms. The paper forms are more for people going out in the field in areas where they don't have access to the internet. So your role, again, before you begin, anybody participating in this needs to sign the volunteer release and confidentiality agreement. I'm going to actually go to that later, but right here's the link. And it should be in an email. If you got your invite via email, that link should be listed there. That release and confidentiality agreement must be signed prior to 5 p.m. on the 25th, even if you're going to be a part of that service-based count. It allows you access to the database to input your information. Again, when you're talking to persons on the phone, I felt this was important. We need to remember that the people we're talking to are vulnerable, and some questions can be very sensitive to them. We're going to ask them questions about domestic violence. Again, talking about why I'm homeless could be traumatic for me. We don't know what happened that put the person where they're at sometimes. So again, we want to use dignity and respect and allow that person to answer what they're comfortable with, and skip. They don't have to answer all the questions if they don't feel comfortable with it. We don't want to assume. Now, if we work with these clients on an ongoing basis, we may know some of these answers, but again, it's preferred that you ask the question and let them answer. So here's a step-by-step guide. Again, identify those people you serve who are homeless currently or who have periods of homelessness. Make that contact with them. It can be face-to-face or over the phone. Again, you want to remember that they may be experiencing trauma. We want to be pleasant. We want to talk slowly. We want to be polite. If you're meeting with them face-to-face, try to maintain eye contact. And something we might want to keep in mind is, again, keep our hands lower. And again, we want to watch our stance and maintain our balance and at least stay an arm's length away. If we're face-to-face, we want to abide by all COVID restrictions, maintaining the 6 foot, wearing masks, offering sanitizer. We're going to explain what we're doing, and if they consent to answering the questions and participating in the survey, then we'll move forward. And here's just a brief example. You'll notice that this says it only takes 4 to 5 minutes, and typically probably 4 minutes if it's somebody you know. If it's a family, it could take, in the actual form says 10 minutes, but really, realistically, 4 to 5 minutes a person. You're going to conduct the interview. Again, you can do that with the form open, the database, and just plug that information in as you go. You're going to thank them for their time, and you're going to refer them to other resources and services as they might need. Again, questions can be difficult, so we want to always monitor that individual. Again, we don't want to cause any severe emotions or pull anything out. This is just to get a snapshot. Again, we have to read the beginning there, that they're voluntarily providing this information. We want to make sure our input of data is accurate. So across the state of Missouri, there are a lot of people entering data specifically to Jefferson or specifically to Franklin County. Those surveys will be compared against each other to try to avoid duplications of entries. And so the more accurate our information is, the more likely we will be able to identify if that's occurred. You want to, again, follow the instructions. If somebody declines, thank them for just talking to you. If someone is couch surfing, so again, remember, we're counting people who are literally homeless, meaning sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation. So if they tell us that they stayed with a friend or family last night, that's okay. Thank them for taking the time. The electronic survey, when you enter that they are couch surfing or staying with friends or family, it will automatically prompt you that survey has been completed. You might want to take down notes or details if it's somebody that you don't know or an unusual situation. And again, service-based counts can be conducted by phone or face-to-face. So here's just a brief look. There's 3 forms involved in the survey. You have a general survey form, and that you would do, if you're doing it with a family, you would do it with the head of household first. It will ask you how many members are in that household. Once you've completed the survey and gathered the demographic information for the primary household member, then it will populate at the end of their section the next family member's information, collecting demographic information. Once you've completed all the number of household members, the form will give you the option to submit it. And we'll review that real quick. There's also a youth survey addendum. Again, if you answer that the person's 25 or under, it's going to populate electronically some questions about schooling, a multitude of things that we wouldn't ask just the general population or an adult over 25. Again, we'll review that form real quick. These are the access to that. It says online portal survey there. You can't tell how to get there, but from this PowerPoint, you could access that. Also in the email that you're getting with this, I will include the access to this actual form. This is the actual intake form that you'll be using. Again, once you've completed that release and confidentiality, when you input your name here as the surveyor, it will let you continue. If you've not, it should reject your input. This is the youth addendum form. And again, I mentioned that there's some questions about schooling, some other things there that's important that we gather that information on the youth. And this is just a partial portion of the form. Here's additional members. Again, it gathers the same information as it would a single individual on those household members. If it's a child, the parent can answer that information. So I mentioned this, I mentioned the food pantry. This is that scenario there. Again, so if you're a caseworker and you're working in the field, here's some examples. You call somebody that's homeless and they say they were able to sleep on a friend or family's couch. You're not going to count them. If you reach out to a family that's in a campground, and because that's all they can afford, and they're sleeping in a tent, you're going to count that family. If you have a third client, you're not able to get a hold of them, please don't just randomly add information. Just don't even do the survey on them. Lastly, here before we look at the form is resources. You want to have resources available to provide to anyone that you're surveying. Here's some resources that HUD's given us. This is about the count itself, the methodology, those kinds of things. Here's a quick reference guide. And again, these are national numbers. So when we ask that question about domestic violence, are they fleeing domestic violence? We may not have, of course, if in our area, we know a safe place at Comtrea is our domestic violence center, but we can refer them to this 1-800 number and they will provide them that information if you're not comfortable or you're not familiar with that. So here's some contact information. Again, I'm Karen Farrell with Comtrea. My office phone number's there. Email's probably the best way to get in contact with me. I also have here listed for Franklin County, Tasha Scobie with Jefferson Franklin Community Action and Kara Smith with Mercy. And again, they are taking care of that Franklin County as leads as well. So again, if you're interested in joining us on that night before the 25th to the 26th, would like to go and be a part of a team, please reach out to me and we can get you trained. And definitely we're in need of volunteers for that night. Okay, so I'm going to stop that and I am going to, let's see, I hate that it does this here, sorry. I am going to jump to this. This is our release form. And so when you go to that website, this again is our volunteer release and confidentiality agreement. You're just going to put your name, email address. Your address can be work address, personal address, a good contact phone number. So particularly for those that are doing the actual point in time count, we want a phone number because we're going to be making contact with our people in the field overnight just to make sure they're safe. And if they've not checked back in, we're going to want to be able to know how to get a hold of them, what organization you're with. For the benefit of Jefferson and Franklin County, you're going to be in Region 1. You're going to put what county you're surveying in, not the county where you live. So most people listening to this will either be in Jefferson or Franklin County, and the coordinator's name that you're working with would be myself. And then if you go to the bottom here, you can sign it, put the date in, and hit the submit button. A populated list for everyone in Jefferson and Franklin County will be received by me at 5 p.m. on the night of the 25th, so that I can ensure that your volunteer release and confidentiality agreement have been submitted. So I'm not sure if that picked up this other form, and I apologize here. So we're going to go on to the actual count. The input. So when you go to the database, this is what it looks like. If you've completed that release, you're going to put your name in, and I'm going to use my name here. I'm actually with Comtrea, and I'm going to do Jefferson County, so I can just hit the J there. And the city, I'm going to do Festus this time. And it's going to ask me where I conducted the survey. So anything after 7:01 that's not face-to-face on the 26th will be a service-based automatically. And then it's going to ask if I did a paper form. Again, we're going to ask that if at all possible, just go ahead and enter the data directly here into the database. If you do a paper form and you then have to later come back and duplicate that by entering it in here. So no, I did not do paper. And again, we're going to put service-based here because that's what we're doing. Then I've got that information in, I make my phone call to my person. I'm going to explain here that we're conducting a survey to whoever I'm reaching out to, and I'm going to read this verbiage. If I've read it, I'm going to say, yes, I've read it to them, and I'm verifying that I've done that. You're asking them if they're willing to complete the survey. And yes, this person is. And if you want to put notes there, you can. You're going to come down here, click next. So again, we're only using the first letter of their first name. And so I always do John, and I like to do Doe, but since it's only 3 letters, let's do blacksmith. And so I'm just going to do BLA. This is all the closest we get to identifying information as far as specific individuals. And again, this is just so that we can compare to make sure we don't have duplicates. If we have 2 J blah pop up in the system, it will compare the answers to make sure they're not the same. If they're all the same, it will purge one of those. So here's the first very question about anyone under 25. Are you a member of the household, including you under the age of 25? If I click yes, if you'll watch, it will populate different questions. And so it's going to ask that individual questions based on the fact that they're younger. So it takes you automatically to that youth form. Once you've completed that, you're going to submit it and it will be done. But I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to say no, that my John Blacksmith is not 25 or older. Then it's going to ask me, where did I sleep with them? If I put with family or friends, so I'm doubled up somewhere, immediately it's going to tell me that I can't count that person. But let's say this person tells me that they've stayed in their car. And so just for the benefit of doing the survey, are you with your household tonight? Or are you by yourself? So again, if I select with my household, it's going to ask me how many persons. So again, John Blacksmith has his wife and 2 children. And so I would put 4 there. And once I've completed this form with the head of household, it will continue on, will not give me the option to submit until I've gathered information on all 4 of those individuals. However, if he's alone, I'm going to select that. And then it goes on and it's going to ask me reason for homelessness. And in this case, it was because he was divorced. He lost everything. He's over 25. So he's 35 to 45. We're going to say, and I've been calling him a he, so he's a male. I'm going to select Black African-American and non-Hispanic in his case. And again, you're going to ask him this questions directly. Has he been homeless continuously for more than a year? And he's going to say yes. Does he have any disabilities? Maybe he has a physical disability. Has he ever been have you ever been a victim of domestic violence? And he's going to say no. But I always like to point out here, a lot of times men in particular don't want to acknowledge if they're experiencing or have experienced domestic violence. And that's just a known statistics. Are you currently serving or have you previously served in the armed forces? Let's say yes, he says he has. And have you ever been in foster care? No. So at that point, I'm going to hit submit. My data is entered. I can move on to my next person. If I need to add additional surveys, I'm just going to click there and I'm going to move on to my next person. So again, the things that we need to remember are to do the volunteer release and confidentiality agreement, identify those persons that we're working with that may have been homeless or slept in a place not meant for human habitation on the night of January 25th into the morning of the 26th. We're going to then go in and input that data here. At any time, if you have any questions, having difficulty inputting data, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, the best way to reach me is via email, and that information will either be put on a sheet attached to this survey, wherever you found it, and or within an email. Again, Karen Farrell. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it, and look forward to having you on the night of the counts and for the service-based counts.